Hello, everybody. Tim Teacher here with our weekly reading of Obi, Gerbil on the Loose. There is Obi. And again, we'd like to continue to thank Michael Delaney, the author, for writing the book. So the Armstrong family, of which Obi's adopted mother Rachel is a member, are getting very close to leaving. They're taking a big trip, and finally, it has taken a while for them to get all their stuff together and get in the car. I think Dad's very anxious about them leaving, but they're finally getting very close. And Obi was about to try to warn Rachel that her brother Craig and his friend Tad were going to hide her music CDs because they didn't think her choice of music was very good. But then Obi got caught by Honey Buns and Sweetie Smoochkins, and they sort of played ping pong with Obi and her gerbil mobile. So this week we're continuing on with Chapter 9, Abandoned. Obi had no idea what was happening, but she had an awful feeling that whatever it was not a good thing. She sat bewildered in her living room, trying to make sense of what had just happened. In her mind, she kept hearing Rachel's last two words to her. They sounded so ominous. Bye, Obi. Outside the house, Obi heard human voices. Then she heard the thunk of a door being closed on a human mobile. Obi darted into her tube and scrambled up to her bedroom. Lifting herself onto her hind legs, she peered out of Rachel's bedroom window. The Armstrongs' human mobile, a big, dark, hulking vehicle, was parked in the asphalt driveway. A luggage carrier, long and black and boxy, sat atop the roof. It was open. Mr. Armstrong stood beside the human mobile, putting bags and suitcases into the elongated box. He stuck some folding beach chairs and a collapsed beach umbrella in, and then closed the top of the luggage carrier. All right, we're out of here, Mr. Armstrong declared triumphantly, like this was a huge accomplishment. He and the other Armstrongs climbed in the Armstrongs' human mobile. Meanwhile, Craig's friend, Tad, stood in the driveway, holding a skateboard under his arm. Have a good trip, Tad cried as he waved to Craig and the Armstrongs. They all waved back and said goodbye, and Mrs. Armstrong told Tad to be sure to call if anything should happen or if he had any questions. If you forgot anything, just call, said Tad. If we forgot anything, we'll just do without it, replied Mr. Armstrong. Obi noticed Tad and Craig exchange a furtive, conspiratorial glance. Then Tad dropped his skateboard onto the driveway and hopped onto it. Pushing off with his foot, he rolled down the driveway, then down the street. By now the Armstrongs were all in their human mobile, with their doors closed and their seat belts buckled. Seated in a driver's seat, Mr. Armstrong started up the motor of the human mobile. Obi became alarmed. Wait! Wait, she cried. What are you doing? You can't go. You don't have me. Obi watched in horror as the Armstrongs' human mobile began to back out of the driveway. The Armstrongs are leaving without me, she exclaimed. And then a curious thing happened. Rachel, who was seated with the twins in the second row back seat, Craig was all by himself in the third row back seat, leaned forward and said something to her father. What was Rachel saying? Whatever her adopted mother was saying, she looked very earnest and concerned. Mr. Armstrong stopped backing up the human mobile. He closed his eyes, made a pained face, then opened his eyes. With a look of total exasperation, he drove back up the driveway. He stopped the vehicle, leaving the motor running. The back door flung open and Rachel leaped out. Mrs. Armstrong, seated in the front passenger seat, also stepped out. Mrs. Armstrong had her keys in her hand. Rachel and her mother walked quickly toward the kitchen entrance of the Armstrongs' house. Obi's heart leaped with joy. Obviously, at the very last moment, Rachel had remembered Obi. Wasn't that just like her adopted mother? Obie was so glad Rachel had remembered her in the nick of time. From the human mobile, Mr. Armstrong stuck his head out of his window and impatiently yelled, "Make it snappy!" "Don't worry, Mr. Armstrong," thought Obie. "I'll be snappy." Obie zipped down her tube to her living room so she'd be all ready when Rachel came into the bedroom to get her. Downstairs, Obie heard a key turn in the kitchen door. Then she heard Mac bark in the TV room, and then the sound of the wooden door being pushed open. She waited for the sound of Rachel's footsteps bounding up the stairs. Obie waited and waited. But strangely, she heard no sound of footsteps hurrying up the stairs. In fact, to Obie's surprise, she heard nothing at all. What was going on? What could Rachel and her mother possibly be doing downstairs? And then Obie heard a terrible sound, the sound of the kitchen door closing. Then an even worse sound, that of a key turning in the lock. What was going on? Obie rushed back up to her bedroom and peered out Rachel's bedroom window. Down in the driveway, Rachel and her mother were climbing back into the Armstrongs' human mobile. "No, no!" cried Obie frantically. "What are you doing? You can't go. You don't have me. What about me?" Once Rachel and her mother were again in the human mobile, Mr. Armstrong backed the vehicle out into the street. "Stop! Stop!" exclaimed Obie as tears slid down her furry face. "You can't go! You can't! Not without me! No! No!" The Armstrongs' human mobile shot forward down the street. It passed one house, then another, growing smaller and smaller as it drove farther and farther away. At the end of the street, the human mobile stopped at a stop sign, then slipped out of view behind a large brown house that stood at the corner. Next week, we'll continue on with Chapter 10, Alone. Right, alone. So Obie thought she was going to go on the big trip with the family, but what Obie didn't know is most families don't take their pets on trips. Maybe their dog, but not their gerbils or fish or any other animals like that. I hope you enjoyed the reading this week. I enjoyed reading for you. I will read with you next week. Bye-bye.